Welcome to week 130 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. This week we are featuring my Batman slippers, which my brother gave to me for Christmas, probably the year Batman came out. What would that be, 87? We watched episode 629 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Monday, January 19th, 1987. And over the weekend, President Reagan signed a secret order permitting covert sale of arms to Iran. So hopefully that won't lead to any more preemptions in the future.
Yeah, I can't see any trouble coming out of that.
That was January 17th, Saturday. And I forgot to mention last week when we were talking about Jake and Haley's talk about his past, we didn't mention Jake's dad is an oil rigger, and I'm wondering if that will relate him to the Capwells somehow, as John Perkins, you remember, worked on an oil rig of the Capwells. Maybe Jake Morton's dad knows John Perkins.
I was actually having flashbacks to some of the very earliest episodes of this series, where we actually first got introduced to Cruz Castillo, who was busy putting out fires and rescuing people from one of Cece's oil rigs, I believe.
So maybe the Morton family will have some sort of links to the Capwells or the Perkinses. Maybe we'll see more of the Mortons as we go along. Maybe they'll be the new Perkins family.
Well, also remember we had an entire storyline involving Warren, where he was helping a girlfriend whose husband had been disabled in one of these as a result of one of these accidents. So that may also play a role.
So, as you recall, Pearl was about to dial Kelly's number in Switzerland. And down in the basement, Gina and Keith hear beep, 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 and they race to the tape machine. But Mason Capwell walks in the front door and says, "Who are you calling?" And we have to call Kelly. She, click, he hangs up immediately before Pearl finishes dialing. Mason insists, no matter how urgent it sounded, they should use an outside phone. And so they go all the way back to the Orient Express and use the phone at the bar. Now, first of all, don't you think if the Capwell house was bugged, they'd also be bugging the Orient Express and perhaps Mason's office and Ted's barn and any other phone the Capwells might be using regularly?
Plus, I would think at this time, cell phones aren't really a thing, but people did have car phones.
So they call Kelly and immediately find out that she's all right. And so that's Mason, Sophia, and Pearl, by the way, in this group. And they surmise that somehow Gina was the one who initiated that call to try and trick them into calling Kelly back. So that sort of confirms their thought that the Capwell house phone is bugged. And but Mason thinks Gina maybe not clever enough to come up with this on her own. She may be working with someone else, too. Keith and Gina will have to listen to the tape in order to get the tones for the phone number that was dialed. And Keith says that they managed to get the exchange and the area code. And he's pretty sure Interpol will be able to track Kelly from there. Because that would be just, 1,000 to 10,000 numbers, depending how small the village in Switzerland is. And he is just hanging out in the atrium at the Capwells, making all his calls at that door on the table at the front door where they put the mail and have that phone. So Cece and Jeffrey arrive to find Gina and Keith using their phone. Cece, of course, is still angry with... Cece's angry with Keith for that takeover attempt a couple days ago, and he lunges at Keith to strangle him. I think Jeffrey pulls him back from that. Keith says, "Oh, it's just business." And Cece says, "It's not just business if you're working for that company." On the way out, Keith takes the opportunity to try to give Gina a kiss, which she avoids. And of course, Cece finds that extremely odd and annoying and says to her, "What were you guys doing here all afternoon while we were out?" So, Cece's been in New York, right? He's just come back, basically. And, obviously Gina's annoyed with Keith for having done that, so she has to cover. She says, "Oh, Keith and I just go way back. He was just being friendly." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, you go back months and months." And then Cece says, "You have your sweater on backwards." Gina complains that Cece is still trying to find where she's hidden the tape. And she says, "I made you happy once." And Cece says, "The only time I ever had happiness with you was when I was without you." And Gina says, "Well, you've got me for 3 more months." He says, "I'll find that tape and you will be ancient history." And Gina says, "Over my dead body." And Cece replies, "That can be arranged." And I think Gina's a little bit thrown off by that, because I don't think she's ever thought Cece would go that far.
I don't know. He's stripped her naked and thrown her out of the house. It doesn't seem a huge leap, but
Yeah, I don't know if it was in this discussion or a previous one. He says, "This time when you're thrown out, you won't even have your high heels on." Sophia breaks the news to Cece that Pearl will be the one going to Switzerland to warn Kelly about the fake kidnappings. Cece's not entirely excited about that, but he tells Jeffrey to take Pearl to the airport with Ruben's car, just to make things a little more obscured. But Jeffrey uses what they appear to have a cordless phone that kicks around the atrium. He uses that phone to call Ruben, and Gina overhears him tell Ruben to bring his car out to the front, and Gina suspects something, and she places a call to someone she knows to follow Ruben's car. So inside, we got quite a nice scene, although it's short, with Jeffrey and Pearl. I mean, we cut in partly into their ride, so they've been talking a lot during this call. They seem to get along well, and they're talking about how Pearl used to be the chauffeur, and Jeffrey says, "Oh, did you quit?" And he goes, changed my focus to other things." Pearl not letting on he's a multi-millionaire like the Capwells. And then they start talking about Kelly, and Jeffrey says, "Oh, I've seen some pictures. She's beautiful." And Pearl says, "Pictures don't do her justice." But then they spot some headlights in the back that have been following them for a while, and they think that they might be followed. And so, on the spot, Pearl comes up with the plan. He asks Jeffrey, "Do you have your passport?" And he says, "Yeah, I have to carry it everywhere. I don't have my local ID yet." And Pearl says, "And the airline ticket's in a fake name, so you should go to Switzerland." Kind of hilarious. He used to be able to fly using a fake name back in 1987. Jeffrey very easily agrees, because I think he kind of has a crush on Kelly and wants to meet her. So he agrees to switch places with Pearl and fly to Switzerland. Cece is annoyed when Pearl returns alone to tell him that Jeffrey took his place. He doesn't know if he can trust Jeffrey, especially after that the other day when, Jeffrey did something that in the study that Cece found annoying. But since Cece's moved up the plan, it's all going very quickly now.
yeah, I can see where this could go in a lot of different directions. We don't know how trustworthy Jeffrey is.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to have a bit of a grudge against the Capwells. He's just sort of appeared, so I don't think he's a known quantity at all to them or to us at this point.
And depending on a flight delay, I don't know if he'll get there in time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he doesn't know about the plan. Pearl wrote a letter to Kelly. So I can imagine Jeffrey walking in just as Kelly is being kidnapped, thinking it's real, and, he and Kelly go on the run in Europe. Exactly the opposite of what was hoped.
And, Jeffrey's a nice-looking guy. He's very interested in whatever Pearl can tell him about Kelly. I could see the two of them maybe connecting.
They end up in a barn somewhere. We
Yeah.
know Kelly's history with barns.
I mean, I don't think she's that committed to Pearl, really.
Mm-hmm. Nick's out of the picture.
out of the picture.
Pearl may have made the biggest mistake of his life by suggesting this switcheroo.
Yeah.
Later, Keith and Gina find that they've each sent someone to follow Jeffrey, and they blame each other for maybe tipping them off that they were being followed and making them change their plans. But they just can't get their head around what the plan is, because Gina said, "I specifically, heard Jeffrey call for Ruben's van, so that's definitely something." And they've set Pearl, and they followed them to the airport. But Pearl took a cab back to the Capwell house from the airport. So they know something's happened. They know something's going on. They know the plan definitely was getting started, but they can't figure out what happened. So, and Keith is drinking a glass of milk again, as he
But
quite
he
often
does mention something about his sobriety in this episode, which was interesting.
Well, I think Gina tries to order him a drink or something.
Yeah,
He says something
yeah.
about keeping a clear head or something. So
Yeah.
I'm not clear if he's necessarily teetotaling for that or just not wanting a drink right now while things are so, fraught.
Or if this is just a bit of a contrast that they've come up with between him and Mason, who we know also has an issue with alcohol. So.
Yeah, and both are vying for that DA spot. Cruz tells Gus to keep the faith. Gus tells him he doesn't have much faith left, and he tells Cruz he's not going to prison no matter what. Now, he says this later to Julia, too. No one picks up on what this might mean. Mason tells Cruz that Julia has too many feelings to be a criminal lawyer. That'd be funny if Julia ends up as DA as a result. Julia enters Gus's room, and the robber hides in the closet when he hears Julia come in. Alice arrives, and Julia tells her that Cruz is hunting for the real robber, which I think may be putting the robber on edge about that. Alice tells Julia that I know Dad doesn't want me there, but I'm going to the courtroom. And Julia says, well, officially I can't say that I agree with that, but unofficially, that's a good idea. And Gus is then, of course, annoyed to see Alice walk into the courtroom. Cruz gives his testimony, and Mason basically points out that everything he's done was unofficial. But once again, I feel this is being done just in front of a judge and rather than a jury. Mason's, theatrics are going to be much less, emotionally swaying to the judge than they might have been to a jury. A young man shows up at the Orient Express with a tip for Cruz, but of course, since Cruz is testifying, Eden gets the message that a man matching the robber's description was seen trying to break into cars in a certain alley. We've seen a lot of alleys in this last couple of weeks. So, guess what? Eden goes to the alley on her own. Shocker. She watches the robber try to break into a car with a big crowbar. I don't know if that's how you normally break into cars. Generally, you would think you'd want something slim to put down the window, but maybe that's all he was able to get his hands on and while he was tending to his injuries.
You've never broken into a car.
No, I mean, if you're going to use a big crowbar, I think probably just smashing the window and opening it from the inside is probably faster than trying to pry open the door, which is what he was doing. But needless to say, when Cruz arrives and spots Eden, the robber spots them both, and he ends up grabbing Eden, and I thought this was going to be the start of a hostage-taking, but he pushes Eden at Cruz to unbalance both of them, runs off and shouts, "Leave me alone!" Cruz chases after him. Meanwhile, the judge renders his verdict of guilty. One of the things he does mention is the finding of the bag in Gus's place. So I think maybe Julia didn't focus enough on the possibility that was planted, where Gus's fingerprint on it. That stuff may have been more important than some of the things that she did say, or should have added to that. Julia holds Mason responsible for the whole thing, and Mason says, you might as well hold the judge responsible. And, reiterates this may not be the right line of work for Julia.
Yeah, I would think that Julia should maybe hold herself a bit responsible, too, since she was defending Gus. I did think she closed her case awfully early.
Julia says she doesn't want to talk about it with Mason. She tells Gus that Cruz is on the trail of the real robber. I missed something here. I missed something. Alice slaps Mason, and Julia says, she took the words right out of my mouth. Then Julia tells Gus that Cruz is on the trail of the real robber, trying to, give him some hope. But Gus doesn't need hope because he pushes the guard aside, punches Mason out, and runs out of the courthouse. Just as we suspected he might try, based on all the times he warned everyone he wasn't going back to jail. The robber returns to the only place he knows, Gus's flat, but Alice is there, and she sees the ring and realizes immediately he's the one who set up her father, and she screams just as Cruz and Eden burst in. So the robber is cornered, but he has a hostage, so we'll see if he manages to evade Eden once again, or if this turns into a standoff, or if they subdue him and capture him just in time. Although, of course, Gus is on the run and potentially, depending on what Mason says, the people looking for him may suspect he's armed and treat him less gently than they might if they come across him. That's it for our Monday episode. Anything else you wanted to add or theorize about?
I don't think so. We haven't had any juicy sightings recently. I don't think we've seen Judith McConnell again, but we'll keep an eye out for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking forward to the Jeffrey in Zurich and Switzerland storyline. And now that Keith's back on the canvas, he was kind of not there for a couple of weeks. Maybe there'll be some wackiness, if not anything moving forward. The announcer during the credits said, next, it's the crime story movie that started it all. So I wonder if that was a rerun of the pilot to Crime Story, which of course is a 2-season show, but maybe they ran the first episode as a movie of the week. I can't recall. And that's it. We'll be back Tuesday, January 20th, 1987. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I made you happy once.
No, you didn't. Not for a minute. The only time I've had any happiness with you is when I was without you. I'm not giving up the fight. I'll find that tape long before you think. And then, little girl, you will be ancient history.
Over my dead body.
That can be arranged.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 630 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, January 20th, 1987. Ted surprises Haley with a romantic evening on the Capwell yacht. Nothing like a nice yacht trip on January 20th. And says he still sees them together in 20 years. But when the romantic evening leads to the bedroom, she says she doesn't have any birth control. And things slow down a bit. Sophia tells Eden that Jeffrey has gone to bring the message to Kelly. Cece gets a message that there is a snowstorm across Europe. We kind of guessed something like that. Jeffrey, there's no way Jeffrey can leave London the way things currently are. Cece says, I ordered them to get a snowplow. So I don't know if it's the runway so much as the sky, but Cece hopes Jeffrey makes it to Kelly before Harding, that is the gentleman, I guess, who is going to be running the kidnapping. Gina sees their dejected faces and taunts them about having ruined their plans to bring Kelly home. So little does she know that plan is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll see Jeffrey next episode. Julia attends to Mason's wound where Gus punched him and once again reiterates that it's all his fault. Cruz and Eden burst in on the robber. He takes Alice hostage and ties up Cruz and Eden. When Cruz frees himself, he calls Lionel, only to find that the robber has gotten Alice to tell him where she lives, and now Carolyn and Lionel are also hostages at the Lockridge mansion. But at least Cruz knows where to tell the police to look.
And I think when we watched this, we both thought that scenario was actually a bit unlikely. But anyway, that is what has happened.
They mentioned that Minx is off the estate visiting a friend, but we don't know where Warren is. Maybe he's in the basement. Maybe he'll jump the robber. Anyway, the Capwell Mansion is being used by the police as a staging area for all of their things. And there is a bit of a tension between the captain, who we've seen a few times before, and Cruz. And Cece threatens to call the Governor General. No, that's a Canadian thing. The Attorney General. If the captain doesn't let Cruz help coordinate the rescue or the negotiations. So that's interesting. I think, it seemed like Cece probably knows the captain. He's probably got his hands in a lot of political pies in Santa Barbara, but he thinks Cruz is the one who should be handling things. In the basement, Keith and Gina hear the megaphone from the SWAT team saying that they're going to use tear gas. And Gina thinks the jig is up for her and Keith. Carolyn offers the robber herself as a hostage instead of Alice, and says she knows what a man like him needs. And the robber says, "You take a joyride with me, the joy might never stop." Cruz finds out from the captain that the robber's name is Zach Terry. So now he's had 3 different credits: thief, robber, and next time we see him in the credits, Zach Terry. The robber demands an airplane ready to go at the airport. I don't know how likely it is that things will get that far, but the house is surrounded by cops, and there's helicopters everywhere, and both Cruz and the captain, I think, at various points used the megaphone to communicate with him. So we will see, with Carolyn and Lionel on the couch and Alice, in front with the robber. He's not totally encumbered if he wants to jump out a window or something. Mm-hmm. But hopefully no one mentions there's a tunnel.
Yeah. Well, I think it was caved in at least once. So.
Yeah, I don't know how bad the Lockridge side is. Keith and Gina find out that there is a hostage taking next door. So Keith says, while taking off his clothes, there's no way they're going to call Kelly with all these cops around. Gina says that she's not really in the mood, considering that the people next door could be murdered at any moment. So Keith reluctantly puts his clothes back on. And that is it for this Tuesday episode. Anything else you want to mention? Or?
Not that I can think of, no.
All right, then we'll be back after we watch episode 631 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We've finished episode 631 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Wednesday, January 21st, 1987. Yesterday on Days of Our Lives, which was October 9th, they featured Missy Brennan because it was the 40th anniversary of her taking the role of Jennifer Rose Horton. And, of course, slightly after the 40th anniversary of her leaving Santa Barbara. Or Jade Perkins, never to return.
And we did see some very early scenes of her on Days of Our Lives, where she actually does look a lot like Jade Perkins.
Mm-hmm. Sounds a lot like her, too. And we watched Conan O'Brien Must Go, the season 2 finale, and he went to Zurich. And guess what? The phones are not working in Zurich. So Kelly is writing a letter to Pearl. Otto asks about Pearl. "Do you love this Pearl?" Kelly says, "There are a lot of things I love about him, but this is not the time to think about romance." Otto says, "What else is there to do? If I were your young man, I would be counting the hours," which he is doing.
He is, but I have a feeling that Kelly is already sliding Pearl into the friend zone.
Kelly says, "He's not my young man. He's like my brother." I want to be careful this time. I hurt a man by confusing gratitude for love. So that is now. She's just crossed out Nick and Pearl
Yeah.
in one fell swoop. Possibly, mirroring what some fans thought about either or both of those relationships. But I know there are some people who really hoped that Nick and Kelly were endgame, as we now say. And looking back on it now, 40 years later, it's clear that Kelly's just not the right type of person to have ended up with Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Something I couldn't see 40 years ago. Otto reads her fortune with tarot cards and says, "There's love in your future. The cards predict a honeymoon. Maybe with Pearl?" Otto's really shipping Pearl. Kelly says, "I think it's too soon to predict a honeymoon with anybody." Otto says, "I believe you are a dear girl and you deserve a good life. It's only a short time that you are locked away like a storybook princess." Kelly says, "It's going to take a lot more than Prince Charming to set me free." Now I'm thinking those may have been slight references to the Princess Bride.
Mm-hmm.
Or could there be some foreshadowing as well? Eden watches Cruz coordinate the police officers. I think Eden was extremely annoying this whole episode, wandering around the mansion, going up to Cruz while he's busy trying to save the neighbors' lives, sitting thinking about her life with Cruz.
Actually, all the Capwells are very involved in this crisis situation, probably a little more so than you would regularly expect from neighbors or people next door.
The captain comes in and says there's no way they can get a plane. Cece says, "You can use the Capwell jet," which, the police might not have wanted him to have a plane, right? Cruz then mentions he has sharpshooters positioned along the route to the airport. But Cruz is really worried, obviously, common sense, I think, about the safety of the hostages. If they are to, they've got the place surrounded, they could move in, there, or they could start shooting at the vehicle on the way to the airport. Zach Terry tells Cruz he has 1 hour until sunrise to get him a plane, or he will start shooting hostages. He is taking a lot of painkillers and starts to drift off to sleep. Lionel reaches for a heavy glass ashtray, getting ready for his opportunity to brain Zach. But Zach is awakened when the phone rings. Oh, those police. As he passes by Lionel to get the phone, Lionel grabs the ashtray and lunges for him, but Zach either was prepared or, just heard something or caught a reflection in something. But he not only avoids getting hit by the ashtray, but he knocks Lionel unconscious. Warren and Jane, we've been wondering about them, are at the Capwell house. Jane says she wishes she hadn't gotten so angry with her mother, and Warren reminisces about his first scuba diving trip with Lionel when he was 9. Mm-hmm. And he says, "I didn't come all this way back to Santa Barbara to bury my father." Warren is worried that Cruz is holding back as dawn approaches, and we all know that's the deadline. Cruz says if we miss, he's going to kill those people. Once the hostages are out of the way, then I'll try to take them. And Warren says, "Well, then I'll do it myself." And Cruz cautions him not to, but, this is the kind of thing where we might lose track of where a character is and wondering if they're going to show up in a different location after the cliffhanger when we see him next. Because he vanishes for the rest of the episode, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Zach says time's up and grabs Lionel and takes him out the front door. We just watch Alice and Carolyn on the couch, though, as we hear a gunshot. And then a uniformed officer reports to Cruz he just shot a hostage. Yikes. Now, this leads me to wonder, did Warren maybe, show up at the front door just around this time and try to do something, and maybe Warren's the one who got shot, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey arrives in Zurich. The plane has happily landed, even though throughout the episode they were warning they might have to divert. I think Jeffrey was sleeping, though, so I thought he's going to wake up in Zanzibar and think he's in Zurich. But nope, they land in Zurich. But guess what? Thanks to Keith Timmons, Interpol is waiting at the airport. Mm-hmm. And they have a dossier with Jeffrey's picture. So I think Keith, just to be safe, maybe sent them pictures of Jeffrey and Pearl just in case one of them shows up. Mm-hmm. And they say, oh, he's going to lead us straight to Kelly Capwell. He shows up at the chalet, and now I really kind of like the set they built for the chalet. It's very close quarters. It's exterior. There's a Volkswagen bug, it looks like, there with the kidnappers in it. We see them for a few hours trying to figure out what to do since they can't get through to Cece. And it's snowing, and we see a little bit of the surrounding area. And then when Jeffrey shows up, we see him standing near the vehicle, trying to figure out from his map which chalet it is he's trying to get to. And I think for something they must have done in a very small space, I found it believable as Switzerland. Mm-hmm. So they decide that, the orders were that even if they couldn't reach the Capwells or their man in the U.S. to confirm, they were supposed to go ahead with the kidnapping at the appointed time. And they have a little vial of a clear liquid, I guess, that they say will knock out Kelly. I don't know if it's chloroform or if they're going to inject her with something. Inside of the chalet, Kelly tells Otto that she will read his fortune, and grabs a tarot card, and he says, well, you can't do that without, training. She says, you just tell the person what they want to hear. A mysterious stranger will enter your life. Someone knocks at the door, and it's Jeffrey. He says, I have a message from the Capwells. He doesn't have that kind of an accent. And Otto says, do you recognize his voice? Kelly says, no. But he says, I've got proof that, I've come from the Capwells. So Otto opens the door, and Kelly wants to see the proof. So she comes to the door. Just at that time, one of the kidnappers appears behind Jeffrey, pushes him into the room. He turns towards Kelly, but Otto rushes at him and pushes him out of the way, giving Jeffrey a chance to grab Kelly and take her out a sizable window that is big enough for a person to get through. Unfortunately, he drops the letter from Pearl on the ground as Kelly and him jump out the window. So by thought of Kelly and Jeffrey on the run, without the letter, so they're not aware that the kidnapping is fake. Because Jeffrey didn't know, right?
I don't think he read. I get the feeling he didn't read the letter.
No, I definitely he didn't read it. So, and they never told him. So, I guess they didn't want to trust him with that information. So they're going to think there's a real kidnapping, and just lay low until who knows what. I guess until they can try to contact the Capwells from somewhere. But with the phones out and there being a blizzard, that might be a couple of days, or I don't know. All it takes is one night in a barn, I think.
Well, I think they're not going to know that the kidnapping's fake, but they are still going to have Interpol after them, so they will be pursued. And I think because he dropped the information, there'll be a little bit of a dynamic between them where Kelly's wondering how much she should trust him or not. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Because I see when he grabbed her hand and pulled her out, she wasn't entirely, thinking, oh, this guy's rescuing me from the other guy. Mm-hmm. I think she thought, is this one of them, right? So, hopefully he'll be able to clarify that quickly. I mean, there may be she may pull away from him, and he may spend some time looking for her, and then he may recognize that guy from the airport as Interpol if they see him, and then between Interpol and the kidnappers, they might want to stay in hiding. So I expect a few days on the run. I can't imagine it being weeks without the phones working and then being able to call Cece and Cece saying, "Don't worry, that was a fake kidnapping."
It might be weeks for us, but it probably won't be weeks for them.
It's not as bad as Days of Our Lives, where characters show up once every 3 weeks to slightly continue a story. It's a lot of people really hate it. I don't mind it, but sometimes I think, oh my God, we've only seen these people twice in 2 months, and the storyline is inching slowly forward, and they have like 80 cast members. So, that is it. That is exciting. The editors of this episode decided to put the shooting of Lionel as the cliffhanger, but I found this a much better cliffhanger. So I'm very excited that Kelly's back. And that is it for the Wednesday episode. We'll be back for episode 632. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 632 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, January 22nd, 1987. And a police officer stationed on the roof of the Capwell mansion reports back that the robber/hostage taker raised the gun and fired, and Lionel Lockridge is confirmed to have fallen to the ground. Cruz tries to delay Zach by telling him the mayor insists the streets are cleared before he can make the run to the airport. But Zach tells Cruz he has 15 minutes to get him his car, or he will kill both of the remaining hostages. Warren asks Cruz if anyone will be left alive when he's through. Warren and Jane talk about how close they both were to Lionel, and Jane regrets that she only ever told her mother all the hateful things she felt. I never told her how precious she was to me. And Mason comforts Julia. At one point, I thought Julia was going to kiss him.
Oh, I'm sure that'll come.
Ted leads Haley away because he's decided to tell her about the plan to pretend to kidnap Kelly, which will end with her fake murder. Haley is ashamed that all of this is because of Gina, and she tells Ted she's resolved to get the tape from Gina. Ooh. So this is a little twist now. Finally, after all these months, Ted's finally told Haley everything, as she's always asked him to do. And now she's in play, too, with this tape storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So that is interesting. We will see how that goes. We remember how Lily was always trying to get the tape from Gina, so we'll see if Gina buys it any more than she did with Haley, with Lily. Gus hears about the hostage taking on the radio. He is in a restaurant, and he races to the Lockridge mansion. The captain wants a sharpshooter to fire at Zach the next time he peeks his head out the front door. But Cruz has another plan. He orders an ambulance and fire truck on standby, and then he sets something on fire. He's hoping to sneak in one side of the house while the fire distracts everyone on the other side. Gus arrives and knocks out a police officer who's guarding the perimeter.
That's his second police officer I think he's knocked out in the last few episodes.
The Cruz orders the ambulance and fire truck to come in to add some sirens and some extra obfuscation. But before he can give the order for anyone to move in, Gus bursts in and wrestles with Zach. Of course, the guy on the roof had said, "Someone's gone in. Is it one of our guys?" So during it was quite a good fight between Gus and Zach. And it ends with them struggling for the gun, and Gus is shot. But before Zach can finish him off, Gus, I think, jumps for him again. Long story short, Cruz bursts in while Zach is free of Gus, and Zach rolls around with his gun, and Cruz shoots him. Cruz has shot some of our other villains on the show, too. Peter Flint. Gus is taken to the hospital. And Lionel appears, saying that instead of shooting him, Zach pushed him to the ground after he fired the gun. So they are postulating he just didn't want a murder charge in case things went awry. So we will see what happens with Sam Scarber's character of Zach Terry after this episode. Warren and Lionel hug. Jane and Carolyn hug. Warren takes Alice to the hospital to be with her dad. Mason comes in and sees the family and leaves again. Julia spots him and follows him outside, and Mason admits to her that he was wrong. He tells Julia, "I know what you want. I'm releasing you from our contract." So now I think it's in Julia's court to tell Mason that not only does she still want him to be the father of her child, but perhaps she might want to date him. But, you know, she's got to keep in mind that Victoria Lane is in town. And, you know,
she's got competition.
And this, you know, conversation they just had could lead Mason to be running straight to Victoria. So Julia can't mull this over for too long, I would think. Otherwise, Mason will have 2 pregnant people. Oh, wait, no. She already is pregnant. Never mind. Eden finds Cruz and they kiss. Long story short. I mean, why did they break up in the first place?
Well, you know, I think we've kind of talked about this, you know, at various points throughout this last season that, you know, they seem to be broken up and not getting back together for reasons that are not really clear.
At least when she was married to Kirk Cranston, it made sense they weren't together. When he was married to Santana, it made sense that they were together. And that is it for this episode. And I thought it was interesting that Mason agreed that he was responsible for everything. And I was like, well, that's interesting. They haven't even questioned the thief about whether he actually is the guy who robbed the Orient Express. But Mason seems to think he is, just based on these events. And I can tell you that is because this is the final appearance of Sam Scarber as thief robber Zach Terry. And I feel like, you know, I had originally thought there'd be another scene with them interrogating him in the hospital, but apparently they didn't feel it was necessary, or the writers have other hostage takings to cut to in Zurich. And that's it for that storyline. Of course.
Well, he went out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, and he's not dead, so he could recur in the future to wreak revenge against the Lockridges, Capwells, Castillos.
I mean, maybe they'll do a throwaway line saying, "Oh, isn't it great that he confessed all the robberies?"
I suspect, Mason will be summarizing it for Julia tomorrow. That'll be an excuse for Julia and Mason to be in the same room together again, without either of them having to crawl to each other. I looked up Sam Scarber, and he's been in a lot of shows. And he was in the movie Karate Kid in 1984, so 2 or 3 years before this episode aired. So he was in a couple of other movies too, like Eraser was one I think I noticed. So Sam Scarber fans will be excited to see him in 6 episodes of Santa Barbara. His last credit to date is 2017. Piano, furnished by Schaefer & Sons, appears once again in the credits, although I don't think we saw the piano lately.
Do we think it's always the same piano? Or do they just furnish a variety of pianos?
I suspect the piano in the Capwell living room is the same piano that's in Johnny's. And is there one at the Orient Express, too?
I don't know. It just has popped up every once in a while.
I suspect they are. I mean, at least for now, any piano we see Jeffrey playing is presumably the same piano, because, you know, they don't have tons of room on those sets and in those storage areas. And but perhaps next time we'll see a different one. If Jeffrey gets a job with the symphony or something, I don't know what the plans are for Jeffrey, whether he'll be a full-time pianist at some point or a full-time chauffeur, or Helen Kelly will be on the run for a year. I don't know what their plans are.
Or he could end up being Kelly Capwell's full-time fiancé.
Could be. be that Otto saw a honeymoon in her future. That's it for episode 632, and we'll be back to finish off the week with Season 3, Episode 125 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We have finished episode 633 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, January 23rd, 1987. And we usually watch Kojak on Friday nights, and we watched Season 1, Episode 17, Before the Devil Knows, and there were 2 Santa Barbara people in it. Henry Darrow, who will someday be playing Cruz's dad, and Louise Sorel, and they both had a pretty large role. It was a good episode. There were several twists that we did not see
It was
coming.
an interesting storyline.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's Friday, January 23rd, morning in Santa Barbara and evening in Zurich. Mason tells Julia that Gus is a free man, but he will have to have a judge officially pronounce him innocent because the case was already underway, and he will try to expedite that. Victoria arrives, flustering Julia. Mason says to Victoria she's easily flustered. Victoria tells Mason that the doctor took her off confinement and upgraded her to limited activity, so she won't be a shut-in anymore. Mason promptly invites her to lunch at Johnny's. She says, I'll be there at 12:30 promptly, and he says, well, you shouldn't be making anything on a schedule because that will just increase your stress. So she says, all right, I will definitely be late then. So Johnny's is becoming the go-to place for people who aren't going to the Orient Express.
Yeah.
Got 2 big sets. It's interesting that they have room for 2 different meeting places. We see in other shows that can't really afford that anymore nowadays, that people just meet in other people's homes quite a lot. Gina and Keith hear a call coming in from Otto. And Cece tells him that Cece is told that some men arrive and tried to take Kelly, but Jeffrey saved her, which Cece is, of course, upset by, but doesn't let on. I think because I think he knows that phone is probably bugged. Mm-hmm. Cece asks if she got the letter from Pearl, and Otto says, nope, I have it right here, and it was never opened. Keith assumes that those men were his Interpol men, so, it's still possible for the Capwells to save this thing if they don't say the wrong thing on the phone. Gina says, the first thing I'll do is kick out Sophia. And Keith says, how about a condo in Beirut for her? And Gina says, I'm thinking more like that little island that she tried to maroon me on. The kidnapper calls the Capwell house, and Mason picks up. And Keith and Gina overhear the entire failed kidnapping plan. And Keith, from that, extrapolates that the plan was to fake Kelly's kidnapping and, presumably after a reasonable amount of time, fake her death. And Gina can't quite figure out what that would gain them. And at this point, we are treated to Justin Dees doing an impression of Cece Capwell, which I think was kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's probably better than mine, but he postulates Cece coming to her and saying, Gina, will you give me that tape? Because I want my daughter's good name cleared.
I'm wondering if he ad-libbed that, because that... Yeah.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun stuff in this episode where he was whipping off his shirt at opportune times to have sex with Gina. And Gina actually says that she might have fallen for that. And Keith says, I think when it comes to being conniving and evil, I don't think even the Capwells are a match for you and me. And then Keith, of course, is ecstatic over having Mason's incriminating phone call on tape.
Yeah. Still got his eye on that DA job.
Yep. Keith barges into Mason's office with the transcript of that call and tells him, he may not have any power anymore, but he still has a lot of contacts. And Mason is a very abrasive person, and a lot of people don't like him. And he thinks Mason is going to be out, and Keith will be back in. So when Julia finds Mason, he is packing up his office. Mason tells her the whole story. Now, that happens between commercial breaks. I don't know how much of the incriminating stuff he's told her, since she is an officer of the court and would be obliged to testify to that. But suffice it to say, he's at least told her enough that he is out for something he did, presumably related to Kelly. And then he says if he gets his way, Keith Timmons will be back behind this desk. And Julia says, we'll attack on another front. I didn't know the prospective father of my child was a quitter. A lush and a cad, but not a quitter. And this makes me wonder if the idea will come to either of them to put Julia's name up for DA.
That would be fun.
Since Mason has constantly, in the last couple of weeks, said she's not cut out to be a defender of criminal trials. So maybe a prosecutor would be better. I don't know. She seems to have, that seems to be even worse job for her disposition. But I would like to see if they come up with something, to make a run around Keith. But I think Mason's got to be out with this evidence.
Yeah,
and
I do too.
Even if Keith hasn't handed it all over, he's got it in his back pocket to hold over Mason. So, let's see if Keith gets the job, or Julia, or someone comes out of the woodwork that we haven't thought about or never heard of. Victoria is waiting for Mason at Johnny's, not realizing that, maybe he's forgotten about her. Brick and Victoria have a nice little talk here. Brick says, I didn't know you and Mason knew each other that well. And Victoria says that he's largely responsible for my being back in Santa Barbara. And then Brick says that the Mason of today sounds like a different guy than the one he knew before Mary's death. And that gets them to talking about Amy's death. And, Victoria's saying, this place is a nice tribute to her. But Brick says he still finds it hard to come to work sometimes.
It was a really nice little scene.
Yeah. And, makes you wonder, are they testing Brick with various females on the show who are single?
Of which there are a few.
Yeah, because we got a mix. We got Santana, but we don't see her a lot. We got Victoria, who Mason's interested in, but Julia's interested in too. And then there's that whole Jane, Brian, Paul, Alice, group that are kind of dating each other or hanging out with each other, but who knows who might pair up. Gina asks Keith to tell her again about the expression on Mason's face when Keith revealed that he had the evidence to oust him from office. Gina says, I owe Mason a lot for the lot of times that he hurt me. And Keith says, when you add up the real and the imaginary, the score piles up. So he's, I think he's aware that Gina has a propensity to be victimized by things that were actually kind of not, really directed at her. They celebrate with a bottle of Cece's most expensive vintage champagne. Isn't champagne one of those things you're supposed to drink fresh? Does it keep?
I don't know. You're the one who grew up in wine country.
I did learn that recently that modern wines are not designed to be stored for centuries. They're designed to be drunk within a couple of years. So, but this may not be a modern wine. There may be a vintage 1930s champagne or something that does improve with age. They don't have glasses, so they drink right out of the bottle. So I like the little Keith and Gina supervillain team, and they seem to have made up from the little rough spot they had over November, December.
They've got their little lair in the Capwell basement.
Yeah, I wonder if Keith becomes DA again. I mean, he's destitute right now, but will he continue to live down there for a while? It's kind of funny. Only Brandon's the only one who's ever caught them down there. Jeffrey and Kelly are hiding in a church in Zurich. Now, when Cece gets in contact with one of his people, he finds, or no, maybe it's Keith, is told by his Interpol contacts that they've got Kelly and Jeffrey narrowed down to a 6-block radius, or area, 6-block area. So that's actually quite small. So they are stumbling through the snow in Zurich with very few places to hide. Jeffrey tells Kelly that yesterday he was just Cece's chauffeur, and that he was, conscripted to bring a letter from Pearl that got lost in the scuffle. So Kelly, I think, during that conversation, believes that he's not a bad guy, that he was sent by the Capwells, because she seems, to be all in with being on the run with him for the rest of the episode. They leave the church, presumably in hopes of finding a better hiding place. And just after they leave, the 2 Interpol men show up, and they have their guns drawn. Now, I know in England the police don't carry weapons, or at least they didn't in the 80s. I don't know if Interpol does. Don't know if they would draw guns just when searching for someone, but I guess Kelly is technically, a suspected murderer, so they may think she's somehow armed. Mm-hmm. Or is that just American cop show, values seeping into our beloved show? Kelly and Jeffrey crouch in the snow. Now, this is actually another great... We have several nice little sets for Zurich here.
Yeah, we do.
Covered in snow. Like, there must have been tons of fake snow on that set. They're crouched in between two, looks like 2 properties. It looks like some fence posts up there without a fence in between them. Very colorful. So it looked, was believable as a European, little fairy tale land. They crouch there to hide from the kidnappers, but a police officer walks by, and Jeffrey says, "Oh, there's a cop, we can tell him," but Kelly stops him. So he seems a bit surprised by that. But she doesn't yet tell him at this point. Mm-hmm. Why. That happens later in this episode. Now we see several police officers in this episode. I wonder if it's the same guy each time. I couldn't quite tell. They see a chocolatier closing up his shop, and after he leaves, very shortly, like seconds after, they break right into his shop. For some reason, Jeffrey turns the lights on immediately. Now, literally, that shopkeeper can't be more than 15 feet away by this point. I think I would have waited till he was at least down the street a bit. They also don't lock the door, so by the time they get behind the counter to look for a phone so Kelly can call home, a little boy comes in right away, and he doesn't get any lines, this young actor, but he somehow indicates what he wants to buy, and Jeffrey makes the sale. He and Kelly have thrown on some aprons quickly to make it look realistic, and before the young boy can leave, 2 ladies come in to shop, and Jeffrey has to serve them as well. And then a policeman comes in, perhaps our same policeman. And at this point, I should point out, a lot of people are speaking German in this episode, including Jeffrey. So the German-speaking actors got to use some of their special skills, I think, in this episode.
What were they saying?
Oh, they're just talking about, that they want this chocolate, and good evening, and thank you, etc. So the police officer sees Kelly on the floor. I think she dropped some chocolates at the shock of seeing him or something. I don't know. But he looked at her a little bit suspiciously, but makes his purchase and leaves. And Kelly says, "Would you turn off that light, please, so people stop coming in here?" So Jeffrey turns off the light so Kelly can call home. Gina and Sophia are in the atrium near the phone, and Gina is gloating to Sophia that their kidnapping plan has failed, and Sophia realized that somehow Gina knows the whole story, but she does play dumb. And when the phone rings, Gina is the closest and picks it up to hear Kelly say, Mama? But before Sophia can take the phone, the shopkeeper comes in, turns on the lights, and starts screaming at them in German for breaking into a shop, saying, I'm going to call a policeman. And so Kelly and Jeffrey race out of the chocolate shop. Gina, having overheard that scuffle on the phone, tells Sophia, oh, looks like those Interpol men that Keith sicked on her have just captured Kelly. And Sophia says, if you died tomorrow, there wouldn't be one person to shed a tear for you. And that includes Brandon. Well, Gina defends that and also says he loves me. And what about Haley and Lily? Lily, whom we haven't seen since early December, as far as I can.
And may not
No,
see
actually,
again.
the last time we saw her was the day before Robin Wright returned, so it was Christmas Day. Sophia says, if you start playing with my daughter's life, then you have gone too far. And Gina says that they've done worse to her. Sophia grabs Gina by the hair and pushes her out the front door and slams it. Of course, Gina can get it back into that house multiple ways. Plus, who knows, there may be another basement entrance, too.
Yeah.
Cece says to Sophia, she actually told you that Keith has the international police following Kelly? Sophia says, it took all the self-control I had not to kill her. Cece says, next time, let go and slam her. Cece also says he wants to send Cruz to Switzerland. I'd hate to see Mason's yo-yos going over there. He is not yet aware that Mason is no longer in charge of the yo-yos. Mm-hmm. Kelly and Jeffrey hide in an alley. She tells him that she was wrongly accused of something, but she can't prove it for another 3 months. And he's a bit stumped by how that will work out, but they don't really have time to talk about that. Jeffrey wonders where they can spend the night, and as they turn to leave the alley, they come face to face with a gun being held by a uniformed police officer. And once again, was it the chocolate guy? Did he recognize Kelly? He says, Fräulein Capwell, you are under arrest. And that is how our day one of On the Run in Zurich has left our beloved Kelly Capwell.
Now, we should mention we've actually just finished watching a television show which had a lot of parallels, a lot of mentions of people who have been involved in Santa Barbara.
We just watched the Daytime Emmys.
That's right.
Nancy Grahn won
Yeah.
an Emmy. And, of course, the In Memoriam had Joe Marinelli, who'll be playing Bunny Tagliati, I think, either later this year, 87, or early 88. And anyone else? Who did I forget?
I think you noted a couple people when we were watching that In Memoriam.
There were a bunch of people from another world. Denise Alexander, John Aprea, who we've also been watching on Falcon Crest quite regularly this season, and plays the uncle of Olivia's husband. I played him last season. We haven't seen him this year. Yeah. So anyway, it took us a while to figure out how to watch the Daytime Emmys, because I was on Reddit and I saw Nancy Grahn wins Daytime Emmy. I'm like, what? When did they air? And I had 2 days ago, someone had said online they were airing, and I couldn't find it in the TV schedule, of course. It turns out they were only streaming from the Emmys.tv website itself. And then I kind of vaguely remember that that's how I had to watch them last year too, I think. But I had totally forgotten. And we figured out how to cast that to the TV so we could watch it this morning and fast forward through all the things that weren't soap opera related. It was 3 hours long. So.
Well, they're not airing it on regular television, so they really don't have the same time constraints.
I know. They gave a Lifetime Achievement Award or something to Deborah Norville, and it was like 20, 25 minutes. She had a massive speech that just went as long as she wanted it to. So, yeah, and the In Memoriam was nice and long, and they had just some nice instrumental music over it without showing some person I don't care about singing or switching to a close-up of a singer when I'm trying to see who the name is of the
They
person.
even
up on
had
stage.
little video clips of some of the more sort of well-known people. Who
Eileen Fulton from As the World Turns, who passed away this past year. I really liked the in memoriam that they did on the daytime Emmys. It was far superior to the one aired on the nighttime Emmys.
And we did see, faces from, as Misha said, other soap operas. We saw Doug Sheehan, I think, from Knots
Oh,
Landing.
that's right. Doug Sheehan from Knots Landing and someone else from Knots
saw-
Landing. Who was the other one from Knots
Oh,
Landing?
the fellow who played the record producer. in the
Oh, yeah,
first few
Kenny.
Seasons.
Kenny,
Yeah.
yeah.
So.
All right, well, we had some credits, the first since episode 626. And they were the same as usual. None of the 4 people who've left the show have been removed from the credits.
So I know I guessed right on 3 of my 4 people, and you pointed out that Santana is still on the show with the same actress, but we just don't really see her anymore. So
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many more appearances she'll have before she goes off for a while. Santana really is the one character who kind of launched the main storyline, so it's kind of weird that they haven't found something for her. But
yeah,
I should check on the status of the Dobsons at this point in the history of the show, because there's some behind-the-scenes stuff we should probably mention when it happens. Hopefully I haven't already passed it. Kidnapper was played by Nick Eldridge, so that's the interesting thing. There were so many people. There was a police officer, there were the 2 ladies who bought the chocolates, there was the little boy who bought the chocolates, 2 Interpol agents, one of the 2 kidnappers, who we only heard in a voiceover talking to Cece, but he gets his credit. And no other of the many Zurich people get a credit, except Otto, who was Weldon Blyler. I think we only heard his voice, too, this episode. So.
yeah.
And piano furnished by Schaefer and Sons. I guess that's going to be sitting there at Johnny's high production values. Thanks, Schaefer and Sons. All right, that's it for this week 130. We have worked our way through January. It's only 6 more months of listening to our clarinet opening before I will see if I can figure out how to play a trumpet for the next year's opening for this podcast.
You could try my guitar too.
Oh, that might be season 8. Episode 634 will be back for Monday's episode. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Interpol is circling in on Kelly.
What do you mean circling in? You make it sound like a wagon train. I just can't stop thinking about Cece and Sophia.
Oh,
And the look they're going to have on their face and the way they're going to feel when they see their daughter behind bars in that drab little prison outfit. You see, I just have too big of a heart.
I wonder if the autopsy will bear that out. There's a memorial service, and Cece comes up to you with tears, crocodile tears swelling up his eyes, and he says to you, Gina, will you give me that tape? And you say, like, why? And he says, because I want my daughter's good name cleared. Posthumously, of course. I think when it comes to being conniving and evil, I don't think even the Capwells are any match for you and me.
I owe Mason for a lot of times he tried to hurt me.
I guess when you add up the real and the imaginary things, the score sort of just, piles up, doesn't it?
It's not imaginary.
Looks like we're just about on our way, sugar.
I don't know why you want to take a girl when you could take a woman. I know what a man like you wants and needs. I can give it to you.
Hey, you take a joyride with me. The joy might never stop.